Shortly after 9:30, on the morning of the 17th of January 1967, Peter Bessel was in his office in Pall Mall when the phone rang. He heard Thorpe's voice on the other end of the line. "Peter, it's Jeremy. Joe's made up his mind at last." "About what?" asked Bessel, his mind still fogged with constituency business. "He's announcing his resignation this morning." The fog instantly lifted. "Good God!" Bessel exclaimed. They agreed to meet at Thorpe's office in Bridge Street before lunch. All that morning Bessel paced up and down, trying to work out who to vote for as leader. There were three serious contenders: Thorpe, Emlyn Hewson, and Eric Lubbock. Bessel's first loyalty was to Thorpe, of course, but he was still smarting from Thorpe's refusal to support him during the Rhodesia debate, and he was also worried about what would happen if news of the Joseph affair ever got out. Hewson, another Welshman, was not exactly a friend of Bessel, but their political views had often coincided. His one drawback in Bessel's eyes was that he had an unusually high-pitched voice, making him a far from impressive public speaker. Nonetheless, as Bessel paced about, he began to lean increasingly towards Hewson. Then came a characteristic rush of blood to the head. On impulse, he phoned Hewson's office to ask if he intended to stand. Hewson said that he hadn't made up his mind, but wanted to know if Bessel would support him if he did. Again, Bessel didn't stop to think. Yes, he said. If Hewson stood, then he would support him. It was only after he had put down the receiver that the implications of what he'd just done hit home. How was he ever going to tell Thorpe that he wouldn't be voting for him? Walking over to Bridge Street, Bessel kept running through possible scenarios in his mind. None of them ended happily. He grew even more anxious when he made a mental list of the likely candidates and their supporters. In the event of a runoff between Thorpe and Hewson, Thorpe looked set to get 6 votes and Hewson 5. If Bessel voted for Hewson, as he had promised to do, then the result would be a tie. When he arrived, Thorpe too was pacing about. As soon as he saw Bessel, he grabbed him by the shoulders. "We'll shake this old party up," he cried. "I'll lead it as ruthlessly as Lloyd George. Harold and Ted won't know what's hit them. No more farting about. Now it's a crusade." These words had a dramatic effect on Bessel. Once, long ago, Thorpe had told him that he would be Prime Minister. Suddenly, it didn't seem like such an absurd idea. All Bessel's doubts disappeared, and so too did his promise to Hewson. From that moment, I was his man. That was what Jeremy would do, lead a crusade. The fact that I was breaking my pledge to Hewson did not enter my head. After they had lunched together, Bessel went to the House of Commons library, hoping to close his eyes and gather his thoughts. But he'd only been there a few minutes when he felt a hand on his arm. Opening his eyes, Bessel saw Emlyn Hewson standing before him. "Peter," said Hewson, "I've decided to ask you to be my proposer." "Emlyn, I can't," Bessel mumbled. Hewson looked confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. I must support Jeremy." To begin with, Hewson didn't say anything. He just stared at him. When at last he did speak, his voice wasn't in the least high-pitched. "If you hadn't said you'd support me," he said, "I wouldn't have stood." Then he turned and walked away. Reflecting on his own behaviour, Bessel felt an all-too-familiar sensation: remorse. I had treated him abominably. But as always, this didn't last long. Soon the clouds lifted, and he brightened up again. After all, he reasoned, there was still ample time for Hewson to withdraw his name.